Hey everyone, it's Dr. Lukin here again, and we are continuing with our EMDR series. You probably, if you're familiar with our YouTube channel, you've probably seen a couple already done here, but today we wanted to expand on some of the ideas that Timothy has spoken about before. So today's session, or today's video, is really about EMDR for PTSD. So that's kind of what we thought would be helpful for you guys to know. Tim, if you could talk a little bit more about what EMDR is, what PTSD is, so that people are in the know before we start the conversation.
Yep, absolutely. So happy to be here and happy to continue the conversation about EMDR. So EMDR, first and foremost, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, right? That's what EMDR stands for, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which most folks know about. So really, I want to give like a brief explanation of PTSD, and to explain it so that way folks understand it, and also a brief explanation of EMDR, and explain how how and why PTSD works the way that it does, and how and why EMDR works the way that it does, and then explain how they work together, the treatment for the issue.
Great.
So the way that I would like to explain PTSD to my clients is, let's say someone goes through a painful life event, right? That memory, because it's so painful, it cannot be processed in our brain, right? So all of the data from that event lives and stays in our, like what I like to call, it lives in our amygdala, right? It's unprocessed raw data. So it isn't the same as just a regular old memory. Now, because that memory lives in that different part of our brain, it's very susceptible to being triggered. So something happens in our day-to-day that reminds us of that memory, and that trigger elicits all of the emotions and all of the negative beliefs usually about ourselves, from that unprocessed event, right? So the easiest way to explain this, I've found in explaining it to people, is like a PTSD war veteran, right? On the 4th of July. So when the trigger happens, which is fireworks, that pokes at some unprocessed memories of, let's say, wartime, right? Now, because that memory is unprocessed, and all of those feelings, they're there and they're buried, but it's almost like they're buried alive, and they happen again as if the event were happening again, right? So I like to think that those emotions are almost in like a time capsule, and they stay there in that time capsule until it's poked, and then they're out again. So the veteran does not think that he's going to be in danger on the 4th of July. Of course, you understand that it's safe, but it's that sound, right? That triggers that memory, that triggers all of those feelings, and they feel the same feelings again. They have flashbacks. They feel panicky. They feel anxious. They feel scared. They feel as though they're going to die, right? And so that is in a very small nutshell what PTSD is. Right, and so EMDR, right? EMDR is a modality of therapy, evidence-based, that was truly designed for PTSD and trauma, where we actually go into those old memories that are unprocessed, and we intentionally bring them up, and we work on processing them together, utilizing bilateral stimulation, so side-to-side stimulation. Typically, that looks like eye movements, where I take my hand and I move it in front of the person's face, and they sort of follow it with their eyes as they are recalling the memory. And we kind of go back and forth and do that over and over. The bilateral stimulation, what it does is it stimulates our brain's ability to process these things, right? So the idea is PTSD exists because all the memory is unprocessed. And because it's unprocessed, it can be triggered, and then all the emotions flood us again. And so in EMDR, we're kind of doing the opposite. We're intentionally bringing up that memory, which is a very difficult thing to do, right? We're intentionally going into it, and we're intentionally stimulating our brain to digest it and process it. And EMDR is successful when we're able to kind of go back to that memory and we don't notice any symptoms, any physical sensations, any feelings or emotions, or any negative beliefs about ourselves when we go back into the memory. So therefore, there really won't be anything left to trigger.
Oh, interesting. One thing that, comes up, and I'm just thinking, reviewing some of the comments that are made to the other EMDR videos. One question pops up pretty frequently is if the person can't visualize the trauma or can't go back. Some individuals, as you may know, are just incapable. There's actually an issue or disorder for individuals that can't visualize concerns. So that's a common comment that people make on our videos. And I was just wondering if you can expand on that a little.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going back to, what I said about that raw data of the painful event that happened, and also thinking about the fact that that yes, our brain has taken these things and has intentionally buried them somewhere, kept them somewhere, so they are inaccessible because they're so painful, right? So it makes all the sense in the world that people sometimes cannot recall the images or the sights or the sounds or what have you, and sometimes all we might have is, I don't know, maybe like a sound or a body sensation or something like that, and that's okay. But we kind of take what we have and we use that and we go with it. So sometimes folks come in for EMDR treatment with me and they say I don't actually remember this one. Like will it still work? And I say that's okay. We don't need a crystal clear memory, and that's actually very normal that people wouldn't because it's been buried away and it's that unprocessed raw data.
Gotcha. So you either can take a visualization or a cognitive element or maybe an emotional or body sensation, and you can either use all of them or some of them in order to help a person process.
Absolutely. It's whatever we have, we take it and we go with it. Right?
Gotcha.
Whether it's a body sensation, thought, feeling.
Right. That's thank you for saying that. Go with it was also one of the questions, and I really like the way you were saying. It's really whatever is coming out, be it cognitive, meaning thinking, visualization, emotions, or physical sensation. So when the other video talks about going with it, that's what it means. It's whatever that comes up in one's awareness. Okay. Wow.
So to put it in a nutshell, PTSD and EMDR, they really go hand in hand, because if you think about what PTSD is and how it works, the person goes through an event that is so terrifying, real or perceived, threat, that the memory cannot be digested or processed like a regular old memory.
Sure.
And so it exists in a different part of our brain where it's very susceptible to being triggered.
Right.
And folks with PTSD, their challenge is when, they get triggered and all those feelings pop out and hit them again. And so the idea is with EMDR is we sort of, we go back into that memory, we bring it up in a safe space, and we work to process it. And by processing or digesting that memory, that event, it no longer exists and lives where it lives. It's actually moved over and processed. And then therefore, there's nothing truly to be triggered. And then therefore, folks are able to lead happier and healthier lives without being triggered.
4th of July celebration.
Exactly, right?
Cool. All right, well, here's a little bit more about EMDR. As we've mentioned before, we do have some other videos if you're interested in taking a look at how it actually looks like. We have a demo out there as well, and some other conversations about the differences between EMDR and, let's say, prolonged exposure. That's something that some people would like to know. And I'm sure we'll talk more about EMDR in future videos. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.